Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce, and this is where we're talking about. I already did my most overrated fantasy books and series. Now we're going to do the most overrated science fiction. It's about time. I've got 5 of them for you. Because for the most part, I'll be honest, I read a lot more fantasy, but I do read quite heavily in science fiction. But I think I don't know something about I don't have as many strikeouts or as many overrated. Now I'll discuss this potentially at the end. Overrated or disappointed? Maybe it's more disappointed, but it's essentially that gap between what you were led to believe essentially in reading a book and then what it turned out to be. People have their opinions, everyone does. This is just mine, and I'm going to jump into it right now before I talk myself into a hole or anything. All right, number 5, we're talking Ender's Game. Ender's Game, it's maybe not Ender's Game itself because I love Ender's Game. Speaker for the Dead is even excellent. The problem is it's the whole quadrilogy, is that it? The 4-book series of the original Ender's Game. It's a bit of a letdown. Xenocide and Children of the Mind. After a point, I was just reading Children of the Mind to complete the series, the main series, because it's one of those that keeps going. I like easily the Ender's Shadow, at least what I've read of Ender's Shadow, more than I like the whole Ender's Game, the main series, and it's just so sad that it's just frustrating and sad and disappointing that. The end of this was I just felt so, I don't know, it was boring, and I guess it makes sense, but none of it was anything I liked, and definitely not what I expected, so definitely overrated. But maybe the least overrated of the bunch, hence why it's number 5, since books 1 and 2 are excellent. They're definitely worth it. There's really no reason to have to read, I think, the remainder, unless you're a completionist. But you know, each their own. And part of it too is Xenocide actually starts really well, and then it just by the end, because it's one book with Children of the Mind. It's just like really one book split into 2, and by the end of Xenocide, you're like going, what is this choice? Really? And then you have to read a whole nother book still. All right, number 4, I've realized I get rid of copies of books that I don't love all that much, and this is one of those. Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. This is one, I think, again, the expectation versus the reality, it was I don't know, a little much for me. Or it didn't work out for me. There's too much expectation. It's, like the birth of cyberpunk pretty much with Neuromancer, which I was also a little bit disappointed. Maybe I just don't like cyberpunk. I don't know. But this was one that, I don't know, maybe the joke was lost on me. Your hero protagonist, and I get it. It seemed dated. It wasn't as thrilling, I guess, as I wanted it to be. There's just so much that just wasn't going for it for me. I've ditched the book since then. And I will try more Neal Stephenson in the future. I do plan on reading Anathem, Cryptonomicon. Those are kind of some of the classics I know of. And there's plenty more out there too that I know they consistently get great reviews. And I think that's why I was so disappointed, because I just don't think I got Snow Crash all that well. Got it in, get what it was trying to do, maybe. All right, then we've got 2001, A Space Odyssey. This is 3rd. You know what? I think the disappointment was I loved Rendezvous with Rama, is one of my favorites by Arthur C. Clarke. I think I like the movie actually better than this. The book, it was just meh. It wasn't terrible. But it wasn't the best ever as I wanted it to be. The movie's a classic. And it was, interestingly enough, they were actually, Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke actually wrote the movie and the book together, right? It wasn't like the movie's an adaptation of the book. They are kind of together in this, so that's why they're a little bit different. But anyway, I love Rendezvous with Rama, Children's End, what else? I've loved just everything else by Arthur C. Clarke, and so this was one that it just fell short because of those expectations of the other ones, and because it's 2001. That's like the most famous book from Clarke, probably because of the movie, and it just wasn't there for me. Again, expectation probably way too high on me. I will take full accountability for that. All right, number 2, I do not have this because, again, moves, a book that I just didn't love is not going to survive the amount of moves that I've had with my books. So I do have Fallen Dragon, but Peter F. Hamilton is what I'm going with, and it's The Reality Dysfunction. Fallen Dragon is one that I'm going to get to. I want to get to this year. I want to read and give Peter F. Hamilton a second chance. I listened to The Reality Dysfunction on audio, and we're talking like 50 hours or something. It's something ridiculous. It's John Lee narrating. I, for the longest time, thought it was John Lee that was my problem, that I just couldn't get into him. I literally got 3/4 of the way through that book on audio, and then I was like, okay, I'm not getting this, or something's happening, or I just can't pay attention to John Lee, or something was happening. So I restarted, just because I'm that much of a completionist with my audiobooks. I'm like, if there's any point where I think I've like spaced something, I will go back a minute or more, and make sure I get back to where I remember and keep going. So that's which I've curtailed quite a bit in lately, the more I've done audiobooks. But The Reality Dysfunction, it just did not captivate me. I wanted it to be so much more. It was okay, but not enough for me to read 2 more 1,000-page books in that trilogy. And so for me, I wanted so much. I know how much Peter F. Hamilton is a legend in the science fiction community, especially space opera, but it just didn't make it for me. I not enough to read the rest, and that's going to be a theme for the last book too. Not enough to really read that much more of the rest that I was just partially into by the end of the 1,000 pages. So I don't know. I'm going to give this a go. Sometimes this is where all I need. I did it with Stephen King. I tried The Stand first. Not the best place, at least for me, to start Stephen King. Then I read The Dark Tower, absolutely loved it, went back, read The Stand, and it just worked for me better. So I'm not about just giving up on an author, especially one that's just like the people that I like and follow love Peter F. Hamilton, and so I want to love him too. But not yet. All right, and this has, I think, everything with both giving away or getting rid of the books, as well as just not being enough to finish the whole series of large books. We're talking Tad Williams, and this is my copy of Dragonbone Chair, which I still plan to read. Again, I'm all about giving second chances. This is the Legend of Fantasy, but it's Otherworld, the City of Golden Shadow, and then the River of Blue something or other. Those 2 I read in the Otherland, again, 4-book series, and they were good, right? It was just, I was so frustrated that so little actually happened by the end of 2 huge chonking books that it wasn't enough for me to get to the end. I just didn't care enough to do that again. There's like, if they would have been half the size, then I think I'd finish the whole 4-book series, but it just wasn't, and it wasn't enough. And I loved those books. They look so good on a shelf. They're so cool looking, and that's why I couldn't wait to read them. And I got 2 books in, and it was just like, do I care about an ending? I didn't. And do I want to even finish? Did enough? It just was so slow. And I know that's all I hear from anything from the author, is that it's going to be slow no matter what you're reading from him. Maybe not as urban fantasy, I don't know. That was my struggle, is just there was so little that actually happened. It was a cool world and an interesting place. It just, not enough was going on to really make me care about finishing it. So those are my 5 top overrated books or series in science fiction. Let me know yours. Do you disagree completely? Should I give some of these a better chance? I really feel like I gave a couple of them, I mean, multiple book chances, but I could try again. You never know. Is it worth finishing Otherland, right? Is that enough? But these are my top overrated science fiction books. Let me know in the comments, what are yours? What are you thinking? And please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will catch you later. Thanks. Bye.